race, class consciousness, and the logic of black and white. Having learned classical and symbolic logic before continuing on to read analytic philosophy and the philosophy of logic, my point of view of social, political, class consciousness issues tends, I hope, toward the objective. If the point of democratic politics is to assure equal protection of the law and the social and legal equality of all citizens within secure borders, then the objective use of linguistic criteria for class social references should be uninhibited by biases of political correctness for or against particular social classes. It cannot be just the media and the government that are free to liberally employ racial class designators in political polls, census, demographics, various recruitment quotas, and so forth. Ordinary people and academics also need be free to be realistic in addressing political class differentia if democracy is to defend the rights of the citizens and fundamental rights of citizenship. If Muslim terrorists target Germans or fellow Africans in death distribution sprees for political and sectarian purposes, for example, the racial class object of wrath is meaningful to recognize for security purposes. If objective political analysis is to function well to serve social reality and purposes for equal protection of the law, then racial class consciousness terminology, when used, should be non-discriminatory regarding preferential treatment for any given class. Like Venn diagrams with given set members that might be placed in any valid position, the world of political discourse will not be able to find true analysis nor serve all citizens equally well if particular set member terms are banned from use. If black class consciousness and political movements like the Black Lives Matter movement of the Obama administration era are valid and socially acceptable, and so must White History Month or News for Chinese People be equally valid. These terms must be regarded as valid class designators, employed phenomenally to advance the interests of members of the classes on given issues comparable to set membership in a class action lawsuit, rather than as bigoted organizational expressions that should be repressed. The mildly editorial and somewhat anonymous power of political correctness that suppresses universal fair logical terminology for select social classes works against the existence of an objective and even scientifically rigorous political lexicon that can be objectively considered the validity of all social and political claims, assertions, and expressions without fear. In such a global, information-rich era, the failure to be free to employ class designators objectively would create notable gaps in efficient social analysis, not to mention liberty. Philosophy, as an objective social science employing logical parameters for political analysis, would create a modal universe wherein all class assertions might be quantified after expressions in logical terms. Claims of white class interest or black, brown, or red class interest could be placed within nation class boundaries as well as international boundaries comprising classes for comparative and quantified analysis with a variety of potential subclass and macroclass elements added. This is, the class designators can be used within a mechanics to see how it works, the interacting classes and elements of classes. Like various sorts of physics and chemistry formulas that may, while remaining consistent with empirical rules, creatively express new propositions, social consciousness, and socially unconscious class values that may be formalized for the purpose of discovering truth regarding political power and the effectiveness of state intervention to promote a fair and just equilibrium. Class designators and formulas are malleable tools for research. The citizens of a democracy in the modern world exist within a social stasis with innumerable interactive future shock factors of communication. The expressions of power and the polity through mass communications and indirectly through surveillance support the usurpation of political power from the people into concentrated and faceless power. A partial antidote to that would be to return to the strength of democracy in free speech without fear of being labeled a user of hate speech or bigot for considering racial class issues and directing news to a particular targeted audience objectively when it is useful to do so. White Americans have as much natural right to defend their class interests as have blacks, browns, and yellow Americans, or whatever color one happens to be. It is in the obscurantism through repression of class rights that corruption cinches up gains of power and wealth from the masses. It is in the failure to consider objectively real social and political states of affairs that corrupt power redistributes wealth and power to imperial and global sinkholes. A healthy democracy defends its own borders more readily and well than it pursues imperial global interests and supports conflicts abroad with military and financial support for regime changes. It balances its budget, has little or no public debt, supports a minimum income for all citizens, health coverage for all without distributing personal information abroad, and is cognizant that the economy needs to be adapted to be consistent with existential mass social well-being within a recovering ecosphere, rich with wildlife and wild regions. Objective political and social class analysis and free expression cannot be restricted from objective use of real social designators and classes when the real interests of the citizens are quantitatively considered. People should not be frightened of the truth. Instead, they should be informed by it.